I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Rules Committee of the Representative Town Meeting of the Town of Darien. And first item of business is to approve the minutes of April 8th. Can I have a motion, please? Mark's going to make it easy. Patty's going to second. Corrections, additions, deletions, anything? Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes of April 8th? All opposed? I see none. See no abstentions. Minutes are approved. We did a survey on the start time for RTM meetings. Krista was going to sort of talk about this. Mike will do this?
Yeah, I got the results.
Yeah. He's wearing his other hat.
So we had 91 members respond.
Yes.
Wow.
All right.
Very impressive.
49% want a 7:30 start time, 20% want a 8 o'clock start time, and 31% said either is fine.
Well, so we can do a 49 plus 31, let's say.
The other thing to consider that was on the vote is 3 people said that if the time was changed, they would not be able to serve. 2's terms expire in '24 and 1's terms retire. And the 4th person brought it up, could we still have our committee meeting before an RTM meeting? And I said, I responded that you had some concern of whether or not you could get a quorum at 6:30.
All right, so we can still pass it, but make it start after the next election?
Yeah,
But we said that we were gonna vote in the RTM meeting.
yeah,
This
the
was
RTM has to
already-
vote for it.
No, I meant we put it on the agenda of the RTM meeting. We can do it in June,
Do you have
but
which,
vote it to take effect, like November.
Right.
The new
In
session.
November.
Yeah. Okay, all right, good.
Patty has a question.
I was just gonna have, do you have the 3 people that couldn't, that would not be able to make it, do you know which districts they are? It's not,
They do.
okay. I'll ask you later. Okay.
Seth, I have only one question.
Yes, sir.
I'm one of the ones who said to keep it at 8. I am curious, based upon raising children and other things like that, knowing that spouses frequently have to be home. And so it sounds good that we can start at 7:30 and be done sooner. I'm just hopeful that if we do start and find that our attendance is being reduced because people are not there or coming late, that we have the capability to return to the 8 o'clock start.
Yeah.
Well, we always have that option, sure, we can reverse it.
I wanted to
Yeah,
get
right.
the record saying that.
Okay.
Actually, I'll go on record. I wasn't confident that starting early has us ending any earlier, frankly.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, you have little faith.
I sometimes see that 10:30, 10 o'clock is, I see us all starting to wind up. I'll speak for myself.
We speed up.
We speed up to hit that. I don't know, I hope that's not the
We can
case, but.
speed it up anyway. All right, so we'll put it in the June meeting, and then we can make it effective in November. I guess it would be the November annual meeting. That's the first meeting when everybody's together and everybody's sworn in, right?
Do you wanna announce the results of the poll, in the June meeting? Is that-
Sure.
we can
Oh,
do
yeah.
that?
No, it'll be, right.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think did we conclude that we're one of the only bodies that start at 8? I think most start at 7:30.
Yes, but most also do not have.
Well, I'm gonna get into ancient history, but I think.
Yeah, we have a lot of bankers that work all the way downtown,
Yes,
so
that's
it's
right.
a
Yeah.
whole
When I
different
first
ballgame.
started in the RTM,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
meetings were before 8. I don't remember.
8:30, I know the story. I
Oh,
was second around the story. I wasn't the leader, but I was around the person who was the leader, who said, gee, why don't we need it at 8 o'clock? And lo and behold, we needed it. We
Well,
voted and
people
said-
were having trouble getting off the train, but that's all changed now. Okay.
We will see is at the end of the Better Side Up, Better Side Down book goes. We will see.
Thank you very much, Jack. Would Jack like to talk or Frank like to talk about Appendix B?
Yeah, since, we're not getting to that until June.
It keeps sliding along, but I
Well,
hear
I was
warm.
busy.
I hear-
I'm out of the country, so anybody who wants to talk about it and join me out of the country, they're more than welcome to meet with me, but other than that, I'm not gonna be available.
Okay. June. We'll put it back on in June. I just keep popping it up to keep everybody's memory fresh. Update on the noise, or, well, we'll call it noise control or noise something or other. I don't know whether it's an ordinance or not.
Well, that's what we started with.
Mac, thank you.
Thank you, but just to, I'm going to give a kind of a synopsis. Since January, we've held 4 meetings gathering information and recording or taking interviews. One of those meetings was jointly with TGSNA, and then Public Health and Safety had 3 meetings on their own. We met in small groups, met with the first selectman, Chief Anderson, now former Chief Anderson, our town administrator, our public health director, our operations director of the Board of Education, public works director, Darien Police Commission member, our planning and zoning director. So it's really eight different public officials. We also reviewed complaints that had come in for various things. We also spoke with contractors, landscapers, and basically what we kind of came away with, there really isn't a big issue overall. We're getting the sense that, you know, there are a handful of residents that have complaints about various things. The largest amount of complaints that the police get are on parties that run late at night, actually complaining about anything to do with landscaping or contractors making noise outside. That's really down. I mean, it's just a handful of them. So we went through all that. We did look at some complaints that have come in with garbage trucks that go to the schools very early, and that was kind of nipped in the bud because Beth Pope met with the operations director of the schools and found out that there was a relatively new contract that started in July with the Board of Ed and a hauler, and they are, by contract, they can't come before 9 o'clock in the morning to any of the schools. So that's really nice. So they're coming after 9 o'clock, so the kids are already in school. It's pretty easy for them to get in and out. So there really shouldn't be any issues with someone complaining that they're coming at 4 in the morning. There may be a one-off now and then for whatever reason, but for the most part, that's baked into the contract. They actually, for lack of a better word, they fired the last hauler because they had that in the contract as well, and they were constantly not abiding by that. So they're pretty sincere that this current contractor is going to toe the line. So that's kind of where we are. We voted unanimously not to pursue a noise ordinance. I think, you know, I wouldn't say we're done with it because I think we want to continue to get some more information. Wayne Fox is still reviewing state statutes and he's going to come back to us with that. We have two students that are going to be starting their senior internship mid-May, and they're going to be looking at other towns, their statutes. So that's going to be helpful. So these are the kind of things we're going to continue to gather information, but at this point, we're not moving forward with an ordinance. And I think, you know, we'd like to make a presentation either to the full RTM, if agreeable, at some point, and also make a presentation to the selectmen, because they kind of started the whole thing. So that's where we are.
All right, so I'll continue to keep this on the rules agenda, and we'll just keep rolling along, let it keep
So for the next 20 years, I have to come and give up?
That's it. All right, I put a reminder to myself here in item 6 that the Pledge of Allegiance, will move that into the June RTM meeting. There's plenty on, as we know, the May meeting is going to have plenty to do on it.
Oh, if I may, are we?
Yes,
So we'll bring that up at the June rules meeting then?
yes,
Okay, so we're not voting tonight to include it into the meeting?
no, I just put it in there as a reminder to myself to remind us of it.
Okay,
Yeah, June, we're looking at maybe moving the rules meeting to June 3, and then have the RTM meeting June 17 to give time. We'll explain, well, Jack is up to his neck in this thing, but we need more time to get some of these other big items settled.
When's graduation?
14th,
14th?
and
Yeah.
then Middlesex is the 13th.
How many
We-
people,
we-
how many people leave
Can we go, can
the
we
next
keep
week?
on track and then talk about that?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. I just, yeah, worried about a, not
We're
worried.
gonna get there.
Sometimes a quorum
We're
is
gonna
lower.
get
We'll
there.
get there, we'll have a
It's on
quorum.
the agenda, we haven't got there yet, though. Yeah.
Okay, next item is topics for discussion and action on the RTM agenda. I was asked to put this on our agenda and put it on the RTM agenda. It's still being discussed. There's some question about whether we have to vote about how many polling locations there are gonna be on the town again. Because the first time we voted, it appeared that we voted just for one election that was coming up, a primary. And that each time we have an election, it says you have to designate how many polling locations you're gonna have. There's still some disagreement about whether we can just use the existing resolution and keep submitting that to the state. Krista is required to submit to the state how many polling locations we're gonna have for every election. And not general elections, but just special elections or primaries. So, they said, put this on for now, we can pull it later if we feel like we don't need it. But it's a fairly simple thing to do, and so we'll put it on the agenda, and then if it appears we just don't have to do it, we'll do it, but at least we've covered it. In-district special education transportation, that's gonna be ready, or is ready, I guess. Jack, is that?
Yeah, and what I'm going to suggest, even though we haven't done the order, but I might as well say it now. That's education primary, PZ&H, and F&B secondary. PZ&H has to respond on the planning and zoning mandatory referral because they're parking in various spots. I'm also suggesting that become the first thing on the agenda because what we will be dealing with later with the Board of Ed, but this is just for the purchase of the vehicles. But if we don't purchase the vehicles, and they have already taken $400,000 out of the Board of Ed budget, we should know that like right up front, as opposed to voting for their budget and then saying, oh, by the way, we're not giving you vehicles. So that should be the first thing on our agenda.
Okay.
Just for clarification,
And now-
Jack, secondary was PZ&H and F&B.
You know, and what I figure I'd do is, we'll just go through the whole agenda, when we get to doing the agenda, the warning for the RTM, we'll designate in each case who's gonna present, and so we will cover that when we get to it. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff here being reported on when we get to the RTM warning. The special appropriation for security, $1,074,000, that's
June.
June. And special appropriation for Great Island, the $2 million, that's gonna be June as well. That has to do with setting up a contract with a consultant to talk about how to actually set Great Island up and how to run it.
That also, from what my discussions with people are, that probably will come to the RTM as a bonded item. It does not qualify under the original bonding for Great Island because it doesn't have anything to do with access or remediation. So I'm told that it will come to us, but most probably as a bonded item.
So those were the ad hoc items that I thought we should discuss and see where we're going with them. The next is the June meeting date. In discussion with Jack, it appears that you've got these two big items here, the $1 million and the $2 million that we just looked at. They're not going to make it by the June 3 meeting. So the reason we're voting on it tonight, the moving of the meeting, is that if we do it 30 days ahead of time, we can still have a regular meeting. You can move a regular meeting under FOIA. Turns out, little discussion with FOIA, we don't have to make it a special meeting, so it gives us much more flexibility about what goes on in the meeting. So when we would move, and as near as we can tell, it's not a deal breaker as far as attendance is concerned. Most people will still be around the 17th, even though school gets out the 14th. But going any later than the 17th would not work, we don't think. Yes,
Okay,
Jeff.
also to add to that, just because we've been keeping track and I've been working with some of the other boards, we also have another resolution regarding the Hanson Road Bridge. We're going to have the Board of Ed deficit that they put in the budget for 210, but it looks like it's going to be 180. And the project that just keeps on giving, the shuffle, is coming back to us because of an
Yes.
audit. And apparently we have to return based upon some audit and some work that was done by the Board of Ed and the selectmen and being able to reduce it. But it appears in the neighborhood of $67,000 we're going to be returning to the state, and the check has to be cut by the end of July. That means that it has to be on our agenda. In June, it's going to the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance in the month of May.
So,
So all that, plus I put down, because I keep on putting it there, regardless of what Peter just mentioned, but I also have the pledge, and now we have the start time. So in June, we have a full agenda, and for everyone to be able to ensure that everything is ready so we don't need another special meeting. Moving it to the 17th was approved. It still meets the timing of 10 days for the Board of Ed to have their funding in there. And also in conversation with Monica also asked, and it makes sense, if we could move the rules meeting to the 3rd. So the motion would be to move the June rules meeting to June 3rd, and to move the June 3rd RTM meeting to June 17th. So that's the motion that I'm making.
so
So it's the
can,
May 20th rules meeting.
That's correct.
that's right.
For the June, it was for the June, but so it would be,
So
May 20 would be June 3rd.
Right.
Right.
And June 3rd is June 17th.
Correct.
And then 2 weeks later is June 17th.
So do I have a second?
Hang on, I need those dates again.
Okay, no problem. June 3, we're going to move the rules meeting to June 3.
As Susan said, we're moving the
Is it June?
May 20th meeting to June 3rd.
Yep.
And we're moving the June 3rd RTM meeting to June 17th.
Got it, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion from Jack. Do I have a second? Okay. Susan? All in favor, please? Okay. I heard an aye from Michael in California. Any opposed? See none? And hear none? And no abstentions. The motion passes.
I want to say that the Board of Selectmen and the other groups thank us for doing that.
Yep. Okay. Now, let's move to the agenda for the May 13 budget meeting. We have the call to order, acceptance of the agenda, approval of minutes, then appropriation of $1,671,000 from the unassigned fund balance. That's Jack, right?
Yeah,
So,
and that has to be done before we do the rest of the budget resolution.
Right. Because without that, you can't do the other.
We can't do resolution B without that.
Right. Then, we're required now by the state to do this approval of the FY '24 to '29 and FY '25 to '30 capital improvement plans,
That's solely F&B.
and that's F&B.
All the committees have reported into us and we've done a review ourselves. That will be a more formalized process in the coming years. This is something that we found partially through the budget, and it's really deals with our LoCIT funding that we get, and that's why we have to do, we did it informally or formally sort of in the past, but we wanted to formalize it. And so that's going to be something for all the committees, that in the future you're going to have to look at your capital plan and vote on the 6-year capital plan, in addition to voting on that year's capital and that year's operations.
That's not this year though, or?
No, everybody actually already did
Yeah,
it,
we did
similar
it,
to what
yeah.
you reported on, and I know Mac did, Park and Rec did, and since F&B actually also looks at it, we were able to cover that, and we approved that.
What was that special language we said?
Yeah, we're saying that it's materially correct to the budget as presented. And part of the reason we're doing that is we already know that not on the capital plan is the potential Great Island master plan, which was not on the plan that we're approving, nor was the $1,774 for the Board of Ed,
And
nor
security.
the $755 for the Board of Ed. So we're saying that it's materially correct based upon it as presented, because you don't want me going up there and making amendments to this plan, do you? So materially correct will be fine.
Good. Doing it this way is not, it's gotten to be more normal than anything else.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can point to some other Great Island funding, which I won't get into. Anyway, next, the appropriation of the reserve fund, that's F&B.
So item B is F&B will give an overview, and then Education, Public Works, PZ&H, Park and Rec, Public Health and Safety will all provide a report on the capital in their areas. And even though PZ&H has a very small capital budget, it allows Amy to discuss the plan of conservation and development, and I know Amy wants to talk about people should get involved in the process that's there. So even though it's small, Amy will be talking on that.
All right, so these will come up when we do the selectmen's operating?
No, the capital is a separate report.
So you want to use it, oh, and then the first part, the 4.2 million.
B is just the capital.
Yeah, okay.
In C, F&B will give an overview and will also report on the library and the transfer of $242,000 from the Board of Selectmen budget into the Great Island Special Revenue Fund, because it's a general government and F&B is responsible for that. And then each of the groups will give their report on the Board of Selectmen operating budget. So everybody.
Okay, so we're gonna have, they'll get one round to do the capital, and then a second round to do the operating budget for the selectmen. Okay. And then,
And by the way, during that discussion, based upon some questions that have come up and have arisen, F&B will report on the library, so that's not a problem. But we're also going to be discussing debt service, and there seems to be a great confusion on building projects when we're getting a state rebate, how that's accounted for. And Jim was at a District 2 meeting yesterday. Jim and I had a conversation on it earlier today, as I did with Mike and Lois. And so we're going to do a very brief tutorial on what goes on when we're getting state funding back, and what the difference is between the first part of any one of our resolutions, where we're giving an appropriation, and then the second part is the funding, whether or not it's a special appropriation coming out of the general fund, or if we're bonding it, and how we actually work that in the town. So just because we're getting money back from the state, it's not reducing the total appropriation of checks that we have to write. That will always be the same unless the projects cost less than what we anticipated. But it will change the amount of funding source of whether or not, if we're bonding it, how many bonds will subsequently be issued. The easiest example is Hanson Road, roughly a $2 million project. We approved $2 million. We know that approximately $1 million is coming back from the state, but the actual expenses are still going to be $2 million. We approved a bond for $2 million because there's no guarantee that the state's going to give us any money, even though we have a grant out
So
there.
you have to do the bond, yeah.
So once we've spent that money, after a period of time, the state will reimburse us. And the difference between what the state reimbursed us and what we authorized for bond will then be issued as a bond, because the reality is we have cash in the bank. And many of the projects that we authorize, we use the general fund's cash as an advance on that project until the project is closed. And then we bond it and collect the money back and transfer it back into the general fund.
So Jack, I followed the sequence, so now what happens to the authorized bonding that wasn't utilized because of
It
the
should be
grant?
rescinded by the Board of Finance.
Okay.
All right? Now, if in the case, and this has happened actually twice now, we bonded for the roof on one of the three schools. I forget which one. It was like 800,000, but it's in the Board of Finance. And then the construction of that roof was moved from the separate project into HHR. So we moved the funding, which we had already bonded for, into the funding for HHR, which means if we had bonded 800,000, we will, even though we approved the appropriation for 101.5, let's say, we will not have to bond for that 800,000 because it's already there. So that's, just to keep it. And the one last thing I'll say is, and I know Susan knows this, so I apologize for telling it to her again. Whenever we do a capital project, this money doesn't go into a black hole. Each of the projects have their own project number, and all expenses are put against that project number. So we know when that project is closed, whether or not we've underpaid it or overpaid. And then twice a year, the Board of Finance closes out completed projects. On larger building projects, they go into a special building project. So while we're spending money, and we may bond because, take Ox Ridge, we're not spending 60 million out of our general fund, but we'll bond what we believe we're going to be spending in the next 9 to 12 months. That funds it. Throughout the whole process, the state is giving us back money. They're submitting constantly to the state. That reduces what we might need on the next bond issuance. And at the end of it, when they're closing it out, they'll look at, here's everything we spent, here's what we received back from the state or what we know we're getting back from the state. Here's the bonding we've done. If in fact we bonded more than we were supposed to and the state gave us back more than what they originally thought they were, we can move that to another school project, which is what we're going to do, I believe, on Ox Ridge. We're going to move some of that into the HHR project. All right, I can't promise that. The Board of Finance hasn't done their final decision on that. But all these are self-contained. This isn't as if, just because we got 4.5 million back from the state, that it goes into the general fund and we can use it for something else. The last thing that I'll say is, whenever the boards return money because a vacancy is whatever reason from what their original budget is, and it goes into the general fund. We do not use general fund funds for operating expenses. It's used for paying down capital or special appropriations. So just because the town gave back, let's say, well, the Board of Ed and the town both gave back $1 million each, and we have $2 million, that's part of what the Board of Finance looks at, of what they might contribute to the capital projects for the next budget year, as well as what they need to keep in the general fund. So I want to give that brief explanation because there were a lot of questions that are coming up. And, you know, not everybody is looking at the debits and credits. of what
There will
goes
be an
on.
exam on this after the meeting. I just want to make sure you're all paying attention.
So anyhow, so that will be discussed during that
Don't worry about it.
period of time.
They run around whatever they
I-
want, and they don't talk about it.
I don't see any way out.
Yeah,
Okay, so, we
We're on
have
D.
the capital, that's gonna be, F&B, is Ed's gonna be in there too?
yes,
Yeah, so PZNH, PH&S.
everybody.
Park
Everybody
and Rec,
except
Public
Frank.
Works. Except
Right.
Frank.
Frank, yes. Well,
Atrio.
with all due, this is a quiet night for Frank.
I'll work on appendix B.
Okay, so then, Selectmen's operating, it's the same cast of characters except for Ed, right?
That's correct.
And then Ed is gonna be, what, Ed and then F&B?
Yes,
Okay. And then you take care of the total appropriations, all of that. F&B does that piece.
and then F&B does the mill rate, which is F,
Yep,
and that brings us to, it's a lot easier with my glasses.
authorizing the borrowing,
And yeah, that's just an F&B, that's an accounting issue.
yep.
And then,
The other stuff.
then we go into H.
Yeah,
And H, F&B will do an overview and cover the last item that we had added back on, which is $400,000 for the Great Island Special Revenue Fund. We did not do that fund last year at the budget because when we purchased Great Island, we set up that fund with $400,000, so we're using the same amount again. So F&B is going to do it because it's nothing more than accounting. But then, Mark and Public Works gets to explain the self-contained funds, which he's done in the past, of the sewer operating, the sewer assessment fund, the sewer capital fund, the parking administration fund, and the parking capital fund. To just give an overview, what we're really doing in all these funds is
there you
just
go, Mark.
is just approving the appropriation that they can spend money, all right? So because anything spent in town has to be approved by the Board of Finance and the RTM. So we're saying this is the total amount that you can spend. And then for the Recreation Program Fund, then Park and Rec will explain that fund. And again, it's 1.4 million of which they can spend, and the revenues are put in there. All these, including Great Island, are self-contained fund that do not affect the taxpayer.
So you got Park and Rec doing recreation and
Yeah.
the Great Island?
Yeah, and Adele is already aware of that.
Okay,
Is she gonna do Great Island too?
No, I'm
No,
just gonna.
yeah.
you're gonna do Great Island.
Because that's not under Parks and Rec.
Right.
Correct.
So here's the question, can that pool of appropriations be done all at once?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember how we did it last year.
I think you did it all at once.
Yeah, I think we got permission from the town council to
Yeah.
do all the other appropriations, and we'll just have
That's
each
what
one of
What you're
the,
basically doing is reminding all of us which each of those funds are, how they're self-contained, how they're funded, and other things like that. And, you know, I found that you do a much better job of it than I ever would. So,
so we'll do a motion for the whole thing. We get a second, and then the reports, and then we'll vote. All right.
right,
And then next is the appropriation of 144 million for refunding certain towns' bonds. That's F&B.
that's correct.
And then in-district special ed transportation, that's the one we just
That's what
talked
we're
about.
moving first.
Yeah. Now, we want to move that up to
Number one.
appropriate, it comes after the 1,000,006
No,
or
before.
before the 1,000,006.
Yeah.
All right.
The 1,000,006 is necessary to do. I mean,
All the rest of the budget.
The two capitals, so, in the future, we will probably do the special appropriation coming from the Board of Finance first, then the capital second, and then, just in case anybody makes a motion to change the capital that's in a budget, we would then do the plan, the 6-year plan, because then it would be amended for whatever was reduced from that budget.
Yeah,
But since I'm not hearing that anyone wants to make a capital change this year, we can do it first.
I just, where are we moving this district special
we're
education?
moving it from 8,
Yep, I got it.
because it's easier that way. And we move it up to 8, up to just after 3.
After 3.
No, the 750
No, the
Yeah,
755,
should be
yes.
the first resolution we're doing of the night.
Yeah, so it's between,
After 3.
Yeah,
After 3, yep.
Okay, fine.
Okay, you've got this over there, I'm trying to track it, but you got it.
No, I will send you a revised. Okay, so that, and then, and that's education, and then F&B on the special ed
Yes, and PZ&H.
and PZ&H, that's right, we keep forgetting that they have to park them somewhere. Okay, and then finally, early voting, second location if required. That's just, that's a bookkeeping. As I explained earlier, it has to do with whether or not the first resolution regarding this topic was, we passed it in January, and can we just keep sending the same thing up to the state rather than us having to pass a whole nother resolution saying that all future polling, polling place locations will be the same for all future elections. Not general elections, but special and primaries. And we're still in negotiation about that. That means the town council and town clerk are in discussion.
Does it stay on
And
the agenda?
they're in discussion with the state about, whether what we passed was adequate or not.
So it's gonna stay on the agenda?
Yeah, we'll put it on, we'll put it on the agenda. I'll pull it if we don't need it.
And who's gonna present it if it stays?
If it stays, would be PZ&H.
For early voting?
Really good.
I'm interested.
It would be.
All right, or I
I
could
don't think
get,
anybody else wants it.
No.
well,
Yes and A, right?
I guess then you're saying I've got it, is that what all right, I'll present it.
That was one of the military thing, everybody else stepped back.
That's when you found out what it meant to be the leader, that's- You looked around and there's
There's nobody
nobody
next
even
to
with you,
you.
you're out front.
Seth, can I add one other thing to what we're doing, or what we're
Yeah,
intending to do?
uh-huh.
Definitely the two 12-page reports for the capital has to be sent out to all RTM members as part of the package. I will hopefully have, before the meeting, all the slides to be sent out to everyone,
That would be great.
because we're not doing overhead, since the only people who can see it are Joe and Frank, because they're in the front row. But I'm also going to be requesting that we do, not on the Capitol, because that's like 24 pages of killing trees, but on the slides that, similar to what we did on the, what we did in February, where we had some handouts at the end that we have I guess somebody suggested 50 copies so people can follow it during the budget. And once again, I'm gonna send things over to Lois because she likes all my stuff centered and paginated. Yeah, which I didn't do last year, and she has told me for an entire year that I need to paginate. So Lois has unfortunately volunteered to do that for me.
All right, so I will accept the motion to approve the warning for the budget meeting of the representative town meeting. And it's called to order, acceptance of the agenda, approval of the minutes, in-district special ed transportation, appropriation of $1.6 million, approval of the FY capital improvement plans, consideration and action, appropriation in the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures, appropriation in the general fund, selectmen's operating budget, education operating budget, total appropriations in the general fund, the mill rate at 14.69, authorize the borrowing of up to $5 million, and then other appropriations, as noted in the draft that I sent out to you, sewer operating fund, capital fund, assessment fund, parking lot capital, recreation program, Great Island Special Revenue Fund, and then the appropriation for $144,940,000 for refunding of certain of the town bonds, and then early voting, second location. I'll get a proper wording for that, but when I put it on the agenda, but that'll be last if required. Okay? Do I have a second? I have to have a motion first, I guess.
That was the motion.
That was the motion. I don't think I'm allowed to move, but anyway, I'll do it.
I move what
He moves,
says.
Patty seconds. Okay, all in favor? All right. I heard a Mike aye. Opposed? I hear none, see none, hear none. Abstentions, I hear none, see none.
And before we go, there's one other thing that I want to mention. I'm working out now how we're going to show the revow. Because I've already heard from somebody, oh, our mill rate went down, so my taxes are going to go down.
Oh, don't.
And it actually started, Susan, I think you were on the Board of Selectmen at the time.
It's all your fault.
The mill rate actually, when we had our grand list go down, the mill rate went up. And what I showed to the RTM is that if you really looked that year at what the Board of Selectmen requested, they were up by less than 1%, even though the mill rate was up by 5 or 6%. So it's very important that we figure out, and I have several ways that I'm going to do it, but explain what's going. So your taxes on personal property, like your cars, will in fact go down, regardless of the value. I mean, cars went up during the pandemic because used cars went up in value. But if it stays the same, your personal car will go down, which is good, not significant for most of us unless you're one of the people that own the Aston Martins in town. For the rest of us, the taxes are going up because I'm going to do it at the 24.7, which is what the grand list went up, and that should come out to what the total taxes increase is. And then I'll do it at 29%, because that has both the increase in the tax plus the fact that residents went up, with a brief explanation that the commercial side of our grand list is valued and has a new assessment every year. And if you remember, we gave the waiver to the tax assessor so that they could waive for people that weren't filing things on time. But commercial goes up every year. It's not just the new developments that's been driving that. And so residents go up once every 5 years. So it would make sense that the residents are going to go up because we have a 5-year value. And not to just confuse everyone, but I found this out. If in fact you put in a new swimming pool or a new kitchen during the time of the pandemic, it's not the value of the swimming pool that you put in that's added to your assessment. They go back to the last assessment and estimate what the value of that kitchen or swimming pool would have been at that last assessment. That's something that, yeah, the same face you made is the face I made. That surprised me, but they go back and reevaluate what that new kitchen would have been at the last assessment.
Jack, is that something you can send out as a separate sheet in advance, separate from the budget, so
To
people can
be
be looking
honest
at it
with
ahead
you,
of
I
time?
will not guarantee that, because for the last 2 weeks I've been working on slides and trying to tie out numbers, because, the information that we had, I had to send something back to the library to say, okay, there were changes, what's your new numbers on this old slide? I have to do something similar. In the past, I was giving, which we started about this is growth in the core business, this is your increase in the core business that F&B started, and then here's growth that we can account for. I can't do that this year, because we will not have a formal Board of Ed budget done by the 13th.
Yeah.
My understanding is by the end of May, they should be voting on things. But
But if you want to do this and not have.
Patty, I have so
Yeah,
much
no,
to do.
you or someone on your committee, what I meant was,
Patty,
could make
I
it
just
be a
gave you
general.
the answer.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have
Yeah.
the answers, don't expect it.
Okay. All right, I just, thinking about the,
It will be in
I don't
the
want people to
notes.
get so hung up on that in the middle of our budget.
I'm not gonna talk about the pool or the kitchen, but
Okay.
I will talk about the rest, because it's important that
I
people
understand,
understand.
I
Because
understand.
everybody keeps on thinking that
Yeah.
the grand list went up by
I agree.
29%, and it
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah.
Went up by 25%.
The only thing I would say is, if you want to keep it as crisp as you can, and you want to keep it as short but on point as you can, because you'll lose the troops about.
I appreciate it, but this is the budget.
No.
And so I'm not doing
Jack.
clear, no, I'm being very honest, because if you tell me to speed it up, I'm gonna take longer.
No,
This is not,
We're
this
bringing
is a
snacks,
very
it's covered, I got it
this is a very,
I'm bringing snacks.
no, I'm being honest, because I've said this, I was on the phone with Jim Paley.
This is your influence.
Jim and I both agree that this is one of the most complicated budget years
Right.
that we have experienced, because there's things that went on in the budget, in addition to the fact that there's a revow year, and how to properly explain the revow year to people, that you can't give a Cliff Notes budget. This is the most important meeting that the RTM does on an annual basis. No different than when the Board of Selectmen do their budget, it's the most important. Or April 9th, when the Board of Finance did their final budget, it's the most important meeting that they do of the year. And so we're not going to Cliff Note it. Just, you don't like how I do it, get somebody else to be chair.
I don't think anybody was saying that. I think I was saying I was bringing snacks and we wanted to get it in under 11 o'clock.
Bring drinks.
Do you like whiskey?
It can look like iced tea.
well, I will say this, that if it sounds complicated, it is because it is complicated this year. There's a lot of little side fundings going on here. They're not small amounts, but we haven't seen a lot of that in prior years, but we've got so many projects going on, and they all are funded differently, and they have a different impact on the budget. So I would not want to be doing what Jack is doing, because I assure you, it is brutal. He talked briefly about tying the numbers. You go from slide 1 to slide 3, and the numbers, if they don't tie, you have a problem right away. So at any rate, that's why I promised Jack not to say anything during the meeting. I'd say it here with us friends, and let it go at that and trust his magnificent judgment to keep it.
Well, just remember, I'll explain some of the complicated things, but most of this report on the operating budgets and the capital are resident with the committees, not with F&B. F&B is dealing with a high level, and we'll go into the detail on those areas that we're responsible for, which is explaining the debt that the Board of Finance is doing, because they're really doing some really creative stuff here in order to manage our debt level and try and keep a constant amount. So that's worthwhile for you to understand why we're doing bands, how we're not paying principal on Great Island for the next 4 to 5 years, on how they're going to be structuring things. And they're really doing a super job, and it's worth noting, so that we understand that, you know, over the next 5 years, we'll probably pay off about $30 to $35 million of debt, which doesn't account for everything we got outstanding in the schools, but does greatly reduce what we're paying down.
That's the key. Okay, any other business? I hear none. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Frank, a second. All in favor? Please rise.